Hey everyone, thanks for coming out. We're Superficial, a visual design studio.
At Superficial, we use future-forward aesthetics, ideas, and techniques to create new visual realities.
We've always been interested in the simulated layers that augment our physical world, how these layers coexist, blur, and can be used to enhance our reality.
In our work, we take elements of the real world, things which are physical, photographic, and human, and combine them with the simulated, the digital, and the imaginary to advance our experience in digital spaces.
We work across three key areas. The first is hyperreal aesthetics that go beyond reality, where materials are impossibly glossy and physics is thrown out the window, where vivid CGI merges with photography and video. We use these aesthetics to create campaign imagery and video content that brings people into these impossible scenarios and spaces.
The second dimension is bespoke interactions, which are tailor-made to each individual project. These include an interactive web experience for a 3D printed eyewear startup, a collections website for the soon-to-be-launched M+ Museum in Hong Kong, encouraging exploration of over 5,000 objects, and a playful makeup music app for experimental musician Klein. Our interest in these interactions is crafting moments for people to slow down and engage in more meaningful ways.
And the third key dimension is future-forward concepts, where we project current trends into new ideas and realities. This allows us to test out possibilities and turn the hypothetical into the real. This is a collection of virtual-only products where we use blockchain to create digital scarcity and exclusivity with non-physical products. And here we recreated a physical storefront in Chinatown to simulate future living scenarios for real estate in the area. Today we're going to be talking about one of these future-forward projects we're working on making a reality, the virtual anthology of fashion.
How we experience the world is becoming increasingly simulated and increasingly convincing. Alongside these technologies, we're seeing a transformation in how we express ourselves through fashion and a multitude of online identities. We've seen digital avatars rise to impressive cultural influence, experienced sell-out collections of digital-only garments, and entered into a generation where digital identities rival the importance of their physical counterparts. Where does this leave physical garments, culturally significant pieces that are housed in museums and private collections around the world?
Imagine I'm a filmmaker and I want to capture this garment by Ray Karakubo under the ocean to see how it would move amongst the coral. Or I'm a fashion student fascinated by these transforming dresses by Hussein Chalayang, and I want to understand their underlying construction. Or perhaps I'm an indie game creator and I want to see my characters decked out in Walter Van Berendonck and Craig Green engage in a Street Fighter battle.
To make all this possible and more, we're creating the Virtual Anthology of Fashion, a project where we take garments like this piece by Izumi Ake and create 3D virtualizations, digital doubles that are free to travel beyond the physical and into contemporary digital narratives.
We're going to touch on a couple of key parts of the virtualization process and the value it brings. In mirroring construction, the process is to first understand and document the underlying patterns, from which clean 3D meshes that are true to the original garments can be generated. And this helps to avoid the occlusion and artifacts that can occur with photography and 3D scanning.
Fabrics and materials are fundamental to the garments, so it's really important to capture the materials in high fidelity. By photographing fabrics under a range of lighting conditions, high-resolution texture maps can be generated. Color, roughness, transparency, and surface details can be accurately depicted, as well as how the fabrics would respond to lighting and environment.
So once we have these clean 3D meshes and an understanding of the underlying construction, garments can be brought to life, to be seen the way they were intended, being worn and in motion. This opens up a multitude of applications.
Our ultimate goal is to build an open access online archive for people to discover and download these virtualized garments, bringing fashion into a future where it can be experienced in new, spectacular ways, beyond what's possible physically.
We'd love to connect with adventurous brands looking to take their garments into a new dimension, and museums and private collectors to partner with to create the founding collection for the virtual anthology of fashion. We're Superficial. Come say hi. We'll be in the Sky Room afterwards. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
My name is Ida Levinson.
And I'm Geneva White, and we are Scope of Work.
Scope of Work is a talent development agency for underrepresented young creatives that establishes equity in the creative industry.
We're in a time in this country and in this world where people are being called to do their biggest and bravest work. And for Geneva and I, Scope of Work is just that.
We founded Scope of Work to address the lack of reflective representation in the industry and to bridge the gap between the creative community and young people of color. As we know, this is a pervasive issue across the sector. It's undeniable.
As two artists and educators of color, we came to this work because we live it. In addition to having an extensive career in education, I'm the founder of a nail art brand, and I work in design and fashion. I'm often in rooms and on set where the only other person of color is being objectified in front of the camera. This industry is built on borrowed youth culture, and young creators of color are being excluded from this space. Having a singular perspective is not a viable business practice, and companies are being pushed to rectify this issue.
I co-founded SO with 10 years of experience in traditional higher arts education. For years, I sat across the table in admissions interviews with young people of color here in New York City that were lucky to have even one art class on their transcript. We have to build non-traditional learning experiences for creative growth outside of the current system that has failed people of color for generations. Young creatives of color deserve a seat at the table.
And a shift is happening. By 2020, Gen Z is going to be over 50% people of color, 40% of the consumer base, and 20% of the workforce. The creative industry cannot afford to maintain the status quo and must invest in creatives of color. But it's not enough just to point out the problem. We must come up with viable, sustainable, and real solutions. And Scope of Work is the answer.
Our vision is to build a more inclusive creative ecosystem. SO's ecosystem is a conduit and a blueprint for the creative industry to nurture and invest in the next creative class. As a social impact company, our strategy is built on 3 pillars and sustained by a hybrid funding model of both philanthropic support and revenue-generated income. These 3 pillars are talent development, a talent pipeline, and a talent agency.
For talent development, SO partners with industry leaders and companies on a curated skill-building programming for young creatives that strengthens their technical and professional skills. The SO community is made up of young people ages 17 and 24, and we prioritize New York natives.
Our fellowship program innovates on the traditional internship model by connecting young people with the critical early workplace experiences that are necessary to launch their careers. Creative industry partners then invest in our fellows, and we provide them with essential training and ongoing coaching. SO's talent agency provides recruitment and placement services for creative companies. Through our membership-based model, creative companies gain access to a new pool of untapped talent that's essential to their growth and sustainability.
And long-term change requires that 3 pieces of our ecosystem work in tandem to support and sustain one another. And we know it works. In 2018, we've built a roster of over 200 creatives. With the support of our creative community, we raised $20,000 in 30 days. We've produced a 40-page research report on key findings from our fellowship program, and we've placed 23 young people in full-time, part-time, and freelance positions.
For example, Christopher Zapata, who is in the room right now, is a 23-year-old Ecuadorian photographer and filmmaker from Harlem. Because of his work with SO, he had the opportunity to work with major brands and recently had his work published in Maxim magazine. Being exposed to a rich network of creative professionals that directly reflect his experience have helped him to see himself in these roles. And on the flip side, Combo, a branding agency, is one of our earliest stakeholders. They believe that their competitive edge is the result of the diverse team that SO helped to build. Because of our partnership, they're thinking more critically about their social mission and are creating more innovative work because of more diverse perspectives.
So what's next? In 2019, we're going to continue to build out our talent roster. We're executing our summer fellowship program, and we're going to build out our talent agency. And we're currently seeking anchor partners in financing our mission. We're interested in grants, partnerships with brands, and agency clients.
And we're excited to work with you. So please come meet us, Chris, and other SO members in the Sky Room after this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Henry Kay, as she said. I'm the founder of USNA, or Uniting Strategists and Activists, a company that started with the following observation. Commerce is beginning to challenge democracy as our highest means of expressing public values. Through markets, Americans are instituting a form of pure democracy, in which we vote all day long in dozens of transactions that reward or punish companies for their ethical or unethical behavior. I think we all know examples of this. As an outdated political system fails to fix our broken social systems, consumers are increasingly demanding companies to fill this void. Working as a design strategist, doing research-driven design for companies like Nike, Twitter, eBay, Target, Spotify, Puma, and more, I noticed consumers wanted companies to solve problems, not just talk about them. The numbers tell the same story. Consumers don't want to see a Pepsi commercial with protesters holding inoffensive signs that say, "Let's have a conversation, #Pepsi," or Whoppers wrapped in foil inscribed "out and proud," real thing. They will, however, massively reward companies that actually solve problems at scale. So at present, companies are ill-equipped to do this, right? So the tool they have at their disposal is corporate social accountability, or CSR, as they say. So whether a company is held accountable or not is determined by what consumers see with corporate social responsibility, as responsibility goes. Before social media, a company didn't have to address problems at scale, right? On television, cleaning 100 ducks looks the same as cleaning 1,000,000. As corporate actions became transparent, CSR's structural inability to solve problems at scale made it inert, essentially. However, we now have individual corporations with technologies, infrastructures, and supply chains that rival empires. I started a consultancy that helps companies use these resources to solve social problems at scale without using too much of their resources, financial resources. USNA, or Uniting Strategists and Activists, is a research and design consultancy that helps for-profits increase the wealth, health, and influence of the American people at scale while increasing their bottom line. There are some of our clients we've worked with up there, but let me pull back the curtain on how we do this. So there's 3 pillars that help us do this. First is our proprietary research tool we developed at Columbia University, where we help companies identify the social problems their consumers are passionate about solving and how these consumers think and talk about the problems. And that results in a report, which we then make bespoke for companies. Second are coalition partnerships. To solve a problem, you need the right voices at the table who've experienced the problem. This is especially true with social issues. Our diverse network of nonprofit leaders and activists provide us with this deep well of knowledge. Third, and most crucially, is our design process. We create teams of activists, strategists, and designers to enact a process called research-driven innovation. I developed this process over the course of my career in neuroscience and design, which has been a diverse career. This is the key to the scalability of our work. During this process, we map complex corporate assets with the help of companies alongside complex systemic social issues with the help of activists. We then find opportunities to appropriate, even hack, the corporate tool to intervene in the failing social systems without reducing the tool's productivity. This makes for innovations that not only scale but tell great stories. That's all abstract, so I'm going to go through an example. This is a great example of our research-driven innovation process, and this was for a company, Data Does Good. We built a free Chrome extension called Data Fights Debt. And for those of you not familiar, Chrome extension is a small piece of technology that you download into your web browser, helps you do various things. Every free download of our plugin erased $1,000 to $3,000 of medical debt using data alone, no cash. So how do we do this? Again, it's relying on the research-driven approach. This is the research-driven design process simplified. You don't have to understand this at all or even look at it anymore. But point is that we find these opportunities where companies can use their resources to interject in these social problems. This is what we learned from that process. Alone, your data is useless. However, the patterns in our data are incredibly valuable. Companies make billions from it, of course. So what Data Fights Debt does is it enables users to copy their data from Amazon, make it anonymous, and then pool it in with other users who are also using the Chrome extension. patterns in the anonymous data are sold to advertisers, essentially cutting out the middleman of Amazon, and the profit goes back into the data pool of people. Every person gets $10 to $30 divided up equally, which is then donated to a company, RIP Medical Debt, a nonprofit which has the ability to buy large swaths of debt for a cent on the dollar and erase it. This is how each free user resulted in $1,000 to $3,000 of debt erased. In total, we will have erased $600,000 to $1.8 million by the spring in medical debt, and increased data does goods user base greatly. Both sides, the people and the company, are profiting greatly. Our budget was small too. This could have been scaled much more. Other projects. We're pitching to use this research innovation process with Netflix, proposing to hack billboards to provide 2 million New Yorkers with free internet while ensuring the company's new subscribers and profit within 18 months. And we're building a platform with government agencies that gets patient innovators rather than big companies invested in and their ideas invested in. So when so many of us see our political institutions governing without the consent of the governed, we challenge business leaders to fill this void. Partner with us, the people. Stand with us, and use your creative and monetary resources to amplify our voices. If you meet these challenges, each and every one of us has something to gain. So what we're looking for and what our asks are. We'd love to find opportunities to work with companies to enact this approach, specifically companies with proprietary technology that can be leveraged to solve social problems if they need to market themselves as socially responsible, or they want to engage in social responsibility. We'd love a platform to talk about our ideas as well, and some of the ideas we talked about in here. So connections to media outlets would be wonderful. And finally, resources to make our research methodology more turnkey and scalable. And also, we are inviting constructive feedback later on. So come up, talk to me, ask questions, anything. Thanks. Henry K. is my name. Bye.
I'm Stephanie. I currently live in a space between art and business. And tonight I'm going to share 2 projects with you that represent both sides of my brain. There's currently a ton of problems in the world, and I've decided to focus my energy on 2: climate change and data security. As an artist, I'm taking what's invisible and making it visible by addressing food and climate change. Through data security, and as a business person, I'm taking what's visible and making it invisible. For the Food and Climate Change Project, Spooky Action at a Distance, I'm working with Ignacio Matos, celebrated chef, cookbook author, and the owner of 3 celebrated restaurants here in Manhattan, whose unique profiles are all rooted in sustainability and tradition, using the highest quality ingredients sourced seasonally. This is Estella. It's located on East Houston Street around the corner. This is Cafe Ultra Paradiso on Spring Street in Soho. And this is the beautiful Flora Bar, which is located uptown in the Met Brewer Museum. We've repurposed a 1950s gumball machine to playfully introduce people to outcomes related to food systems and global warming. There's an edible infographic that comes out of a gumball capsule with some facts about food and climate change, and it aims to show people how their behavior impacts these systems, and by extension, their health and the health of the planet. Ignacio and his team made this delicious, delicious bite with ingredients culled from a climate change winner list. They chose seaweed, chia seeds, and coconut palm sugar, and each of these ingredients acts positively on the environment. This is an example of a fortune you might find inside the capsule. The sustainable future you seek is not on Mars, but on Earth, and it contains seaweed. This is the other side of that fortune. The gumball machine gamifies this activity and turns depressing as hell information into you're just getting that right. And turns depressing as hell information into edible pathways to show how these systems influence each other and how small changes make big impacts. The project's going to travel to the 100th anniversary celebration of the Bauhaus School of Design in Germany in March. It's also the pilot project for an initiative being developed with New Museum, New Ink, Rhizome, and the James Beard Foundation. And the idea is to pair chefs with artists and technologists to make new projects addressing issues around food and climate change. We're looking for sponsorship to fund the chefs, the artists, and the nonprofits who are collaborating together to make this all possible. The idea is that this is an ongoing endeavor, leveraging the superpowers of everyone involved until we save the planet from blowing itself up. So now I'm going to talk to you about the other side of my brain, my business. This is how I'm taking information that's visible and making it invisible. This is my company, BLIXT. Every day, countless times, a pattern happens online that is massively insecure. How many different entities on the internet have our email address, our phone number, our social security number? Why? The half-life of this data that gets collected and or stolen is immeasurable. According to Robert Mueller, there are only two types of companies, those that have been hacked and those that will be. This is a small sample of global data breaches since January 2016. And it's a small sample because companies spend a ton of money trying to keep these stories hidden. From those data breaches, over 1 billion accounts have been compromised. My company has a ton of use cases for the platform. I'm going to share a couple with you. A lawyer needs to share a document with a client, but isn't comfortable that her paralegal is able to see the details of the document. A home buyer needs to share information with a third party in the sale, but isn't interested in broadcasting her social security number over email. And finally, a bank exec spends an hour making 4 different copies of the same contract to obscure different information for a multi-party investment. This is a screen grab from our working prototype, BLIXT. User will upload a document and say they need to share some information, financial information, with a potential employer. But really, they don't want to give them their home address, their social security number, and countless different kinds of data that you don't want to share with strangers. So let's just say they only need to share this number. BLIXT, our platform, lets you select the data that you'd like to share within a document and just share that data. And after you receive confirmation that they've received the information and that's been verified, it's gone. Yes. In addition to this, our platform is also able to give access to multiple people within a document through permissioning. So if somebody wants to look at one part of a document, they have access. If another person wants to look at a different part of that document, they also have access. We're looking for partners to build out an MVP for this project, and we're also looking for investors to help fund this process. I'm in the business of creative problem solving and how we can work together in all forms to address not only these 2 problems, but so many of the issues addressing our planet and its inhabitants. Thank you so much for listening. Please come upstairs. I have both projects in prototype form upstairs in the Sky Room. Thank you.
Everyone. My name is Wendy Falk, and I'm a trained architect with over a decade of experience in architecture, construction, and engineering. I'm here to talk to you about New Territory, my 2.5 business, I guess. The sharing economy is expected to grow from $14 billion in 2014 to $335 billion by 2025. So imagine if LinkedIn, Soho House, Airbnb had a baby. New Territory is the modern-day co-living venture for changemakers, impact creatives who want to network and breed new projects in real life. So IRL for all of these individuals here. So in short, New Territory is here to offer short-term leases and flexible leases that engage in emerging professionals who are responding to the aging population through a co-living model. We're interested in facilitating the exchange between young professionals and mentors with similar social impact and impact entrepreneurship interests, especially with organically developing and establishing business opportunities and community building. We're interested in impact and research, philanthropy, mitigating gentrification in real estate. I know that's a very difficult option for those who are in real estate. And also have organic young professional and mentorship coexistence. And also, finally, obviously, real estate investment as an asset property. We've positioned new territory within a very special intersection within our competition, as historically, new real estate developments take advantage of creative communities and neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods such as Brooklyn, who do not always consider its effect on having new developments in communities. New territory, however, wants to turn that on its head and make a concerted effort to contribute to these communities, thus creating more impactful outcomes for real estate development, especially in New York City. We're interested in looking to develop private and public partnerships, foundational partnerships, whereby new territory will work directly with these missions to align with ours and facilitate larger and stronger community engagement. Potentially in this case, we are interested in working with Made in Brownsville and Inner City Foundation for New York. Each house would be partnering with existing foundations and nonprofits most aligned with our locations. Residents will be required to engage with existing partnerships within each house. For example, our Brooklyn location will be partnering with Made in Brownsville and Inner City Foundation of New York, and these two nonprofits are focused on developing social engagement for underserved Brooklyn communities on STEAM education. For example, what we're interested in also doing with New Territory in its inaugural house is to focus on residents that are recruiting with special skills aligned with the STEAM education. Members will be chosen based on their skill, requirements, and organization affiliation. We're interested in the ways that how it works is through membership, and there will be affordable monthly non-residencies and resident membership. We're also obviously interested in real life exchange for members and mentors, and also flexible short-term leases with eventually taking over the world in California, Europe, and Asia, and potentially how can you be involved? We are incorporated as a benefits corporation, so what we're asking for is brand investments on one side and asset investments on the other. We are also likely to be working and very interested in working with real estate investments that are into opportunity zones and tax break relief with our partnering organizations. Our partnerships and business model is twofold. We have a B2C option, which is for the impact and creative entrepreneurs for community membership. And secondarily, we'll have a B2B model for HR and recruitment for corporate memberships. We have a very realistic operations and construction startup cost. $700 is really low for New York, for those who know about the numbers. We also have a very aggressive and realistic timeline from many years of research and or moving forward. We're also working with our existing partnerships from my other business as marketing strategy and partnership strategy. And we also have a very, very diverse core team with extensive background in real estate, architecture, branding, and community development. This is also substantiated through over 8 years of my doctoral research at Harvard. And more importantly, we also have a board membership and mentorship for the nonprofit and for-profit. And a lot of these mentors obviously come from our diverse pool at a new museum, but also through makers and planners and policymakers from New York City. We are assembled by a very amazing team of advisors, and I identified a location in Brooklyn. What we're looking for is investment in strategic partnerships, especially to continue this work. And there are many points of entry involved to work with us to build new territory and the future of urban living. Let us be part of your community with new territory, and come speak with us afterwards at the Sky Room. Thank you so much. I'm Wendy.
So I'm Jacob Gordon. I'm the co-founder of Artifon. We were, class of 2016 and 2017 here. We're a creative tech company just empowering the next billion music makers. Start with a question, actually. How many people here played music as a kid, like played in a band or took music lessons? Nearly everybody. How many people play music now? Right. All right. It was nice to see some new hands go up, actually. That's a much harder direction to go in than the other direction. But that delta there is the problem. So music is a human fundamental. Most of us want to do it. Most of us don't do it. We see this as a huge opportunity. And we know that when creative technologies go digital, enormous new groups of people can get involved. Of course, music is already digital. Everything you heard today coming through a speaker involved digital technology, whether it sounded like digital music or electronic music or not. But these tools are being designed for professionals still, not everyday people. They're complex, they're expensive, they have high learning curves. Music making is ready to go through the same transformation that brought photography out of the darkroom and into the hands of everyday people. So we designed a new musical instrument, the Instrument One. So it's this musical multi-instrument that connects to your phone or your computer. You can play with intuitive techniques like guitar, violin, piano, drums. It makes any sound you can dream of, and you can take it with you any place. Think of it as a universal controller for music. Think of what the PC would be without the mouse or the keyboard, or what gaming would be without the handheld controller. These are user interfaces, and they are pivotal and they're revolutionary in making experiences accessible to large new groups of people. We launched this idea as a Kickstarter project in 2015, where it remains the highest raising crowdfund for a musical instrument on any platform. And coming off of Kickstarter, it was named one of Time Magazine's best inventions of the year. So we have a company now. We're 10 people. We just recruited a director of products from SpaceX, so we literally have a rocket scientist leading our products team. So wait till you see what's next, right? We've pretty much doubled sales every year since we've been on the market. Since 2016, we sell direct and through a network of retailers all over the place. And every day, people around the world use the Instrument One to express themselves in new ways. And I'll share a little bit of what people are doing. Here we go.
Oh my God. Mind freaking blown.
This is the future. Knows how to party.
Avec les foot.
To understand, oh my little girl, all I've wanted, all I've needed is here in my arms.
It makes you happy. Give me the best. It makes you happy. Then why the hell are you so sad?
I really have the best job. It's not really fair. And I'm obsessed with getting in touch with the people who use our products. So there's so many stories in that video, and I know a lot of those people now through them finding us or us finding them. And we get to do things like work with emerging artists to create new work. So we partnered with the Ace Hotel for their Artist in Residence program last year to work with 4 different artists across the month of August. And that was a relationship that was sparked via New Ink, actually. This video is on our YouTube. It's really fun. So we've been preaching this mission for a while, that everybody should be able to play music, which sounds great, right? But it's actually more controversial than you might think. A lot of self-identified musicians and music professionals, they feel threatened by this idea, or they think, like, God forbid everybody could play music, because wouldn't that just ruin music? So it's really nice when, somebody comes down from his cloud and is like, totally gets what we're talking about. So check this out.
I'm pretty well known for bringing music and technology together, so I'm always looking for new technology. I'm always making new music, and it's kind of my thing. And young musicians around the world agree with me that technology is the future of music. And that's why I'm here to meet the inventors of the Artifine Instrument One, a brand new technology that claims to put every musical instrument you could ever want right in your backpack and let anyone become a musician. But is it true? Is Artifon the next garage band? I mean, let's find out.
Mike.
How you doing, Mike?
Jacob.
How you doing, Jacob?
It's
Very
an
nice to
honor.
meet you as well. What we got here, guys?
This is the Artifon Instrument 1.
This looks so interesting. Music and technology coming together to make something so accessible, so fun. Basically, anybody can become a musician. I'm in this gigantic studio, full of equipment, big board, all this gear, all this rack stuff. I didn't need any of it. This is what the future looks like now. Get used to it.
Get used to it. He proceeded so we were in the studio in LA to shoot that NRG, and he had a session that night in the studio, so he just took the Instrument 1 in. So look for T-Pain's new record. But look, nothing about this has been easy. Try building physical, complex electronics and then shipping them all over the world. It's not for the faint of heart, but I am especially grateful to the New Ink community for being really supportive through some of the more difficult periods that we went through as a company, and there have been quite a few. But I'm happy to say we're closing a round of funding right now that includes strategic investment from one of the major record labels. We're expanding sales into Europe and looking forward to Asia. We are currently in development of multiple new hardware and software products, so that rocket scientist I mentioned. And we're going to raise a Series A later this year to continue building our platform for social music. So this is my email, jacob@artifon.com. Please do get in touch if you want to partner, you want to work with us, if you are a musician or an educator, if you're an investor, or you just want to say hello. Also, that code New Ink will take $50 off if you want one of these in your life at artifon.com. And we're going to take a break now, I believe, but then after the second batch, there's we're going to go up to the Sky Room and come up and play some music with me. So thank you. Okay. Bye.
Hi, I'm Tulare Monering. I'm a fashion designer, retail entrepreneur, and founder of Aketsa, a startup streetwear brand based in New York. My career in the fashion industry spans 15 years and 3 continents. I started out working under Belgian designer Walter van Beirendonk, then founded The Fashion Deli, an internationally acclaimed concept store in Cape Town. I launched an eponymous brand that sold at Fred Segal in Los Angeles, and co-founded a fashion brand with Oscar-winning costume designer Ruth Carter. With my vast experience in fashion, what I now know for sure is that fashion is not simply pieces of clothing that we put on. It is a definer of our identity and how we show up in the world. When we get dressed, we are making specific choices and statements that are aligned with our identity and how we navigate the world. This speaks to who we are and what we care about, regardless of price point. I see myself not only as an artist, but also a global cultural polyglot who takes into account the cultural values of my customers and to respond to them in a responsible and thoughtful way. When I founded Aketsa, my mandate was to design streetwear that reflects a world that is inspiring to me and that represents all of us. Aketsa means to increase, grow, or prosper in my native language of Sepedi, one of South Africa's 11 official languages. I believe that the best of us is when we are all connected, consumers, community, and culture, in a collective space where we can all grow and prosper together. Aketsa is a streetwear brand with a strong cultural anchor that represents the future. Aketsa is a connective tissue that brings different people and cultures together through fashion. As a cultural community, we seek to prove that our diversity is not what makes us weak, but makes us stronger and more prosperous. Aketsa's mission is to create a cultural identity, consciousness, and style movement that resonates with a global audience and has potential for scale. Streetwear has become a global language, and that is hugely powerful when you think about what's going on in the world right now. With an estimated value of $309 billion, streetwear is one of the fastest growing industries. Investors are pouring millions of dollars into startups that occupy the space. Most notably is the private equity firm, the Carlyle Group's recent acquisition of a 50% stake in Supreme, in a deal that valued the brand at $1 billion. The success of Supreme, and streetwear more broadly, is no surprise. When we look at fashion and how fashion and culture are changing, clothing across the board is becoming increasingly more casual, drawing inspiration from sports and driving the popularity of items such as sneakers, which is currently the fastest growing category in the fashion industry, capturing young males, a previously untapped market. Millennials and Gen Z represent a rapidly growing share of fashion consumers, and they want products that make bold statements and make them stand out, whilst maintaining ties to community, authenticity, and a shared sense of culture. On March 12th, we are launching the Oketsa e-commerce store. Our direct-to-consumer business model is based on a low barrier to market entry, increasing the return on investment in the early stages of the company. True to the community and consumer-centric values of Oketsa, we will leverage the cost-effective power of social media to promote the brand and drive sales. Social media is the de facto platform for streetwear and its influencers. Our long-term growth strategy is to continue to grow beyond our current apparel and accessories categories. Our underlying business model can be applied to numerous other products, enabling us to build a bigger and more profitable business. Our viability is grounded in our ability to expand, adapt, and pivot. Beyond this, Oketsa will collaborate with leading streetwear and athleisure brands in order to expose Oketsa to a worldwide audience and leverage cross-market brand visibility, and that proven profitability will be within the sector. In our quest to become a leading global streetwear brand, we are seeking strategic partners and mentors to help us navigate post-launch market validation and introductions to investors. Thank you for the opportunity to share Oketsa's vision. I will be upstairs in the Sky Room, so will my brand ambassadors, where you can see more of our fabulous collection. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Diana Cristobal and I'm here representing the architecture collective KNITKNOT, a practice that I co-founded with other 5 architects in 2013, and today I'm going to be presenting our current project, Commons Building Together with Earth. So I want to begin by asking a question that has concerned our practice for a long time, which is, can architecture be a common good? And by that I mean, can it encourage forms of sharing space and collective actions that can build a common benefit over time? Or does it have to be relegated to just being a commodity that maximizes profit? So our practice believes that an architecture of the common is indeed possible, but that in order to engage with it, we need to understand buildings not just as these physical objects that may or may not encourage these collective actions, but also as a set of labor practices, legal frameworks, and participatory techniques that seek direct engagement with their users. So in that sense, we see an important difference between this notion of the commons and the more traditional idea of a public building. To us, the commons is not a stable thing to be administered by the state, but it is a practice that has to be negotiated between different social groups and their environments. So one of our last projects, a school that we built in Nicaragua with the help of a local NGO, enabled us to test these ideas and to put them in practice. The school tested the idea of the commons in 2 ways. First, running the Go campaign that brought together a diverse set of people from over 30 different countries in order to provide the funds that were necessary for the school, and that also encouraged some to participate in alternative ways, such as providing technical or legal advice. And second, because we chose a construction technique that had to be designed and built collectively. So that was a form of building that required great collective effort, but no expensive power tools or technical expertise, high technical expertise. The earthbag system. The earthbag system is a construction technique that until nowadays has been mostly used only for emergency structures and for self-build. So it actually originated as a means to build protective barriers for flood control And in the 60s, it began to be used by some institutions, such as the United Nations, in their developing programs. However, its aesthetic, its technical, and its environmental potential have not yet been developed. So in the school that we built in Nicaragua, we responded to some of these questions. We collaborated with engineers in order to improve the structural integrity of the system. And we conducted tests concerning the material's ability to resist loads. And we also organized a series of design workshops with the community when they were included always as active decision makers in the process. So the school was only the first project of a larger series that we like to think about it as responding to this question of how to transform a bag of dirt into a collective form of building. And so the second instance of this exploration happened about a year ago with our proposal for a pavilion in Governor's Island, where the idea of the airbag was applied to New York public spaces. So this was a zero-waste pavilion that was to be collectively built during the summer and then collectively dismantled into the island landscape. So our next step is to design and build a series of prototypes that continue testing this idea of the airbag as a catalyst for the commons. And so we have envisioned 4 different types of institutional collaborations, each of which highlight a different aspect of the material and its impact on a community. Playgrounds that take advantage of the material's plasticity and that therefore can create geometries and spaces that could be very difficult to achieve with prefabricated materials. Landscape and water infrastructures that take advantage of the solidity and that therefore can create topographic operations for gathering spaces. Small-scale structures that host educational programs for cultural institutions and that can be very cheap and very quickly built. In fact, right now, we have reduced the amount of time that is necessary to build a room similar to the one that we are in to less than 2 weeks. And lastly, also structures for food production, where the airbag also performs as a biological habitat. So in this case, plants, fungi, and other small organisms can grow in the outward of these bags and can change and can create a skin that changes and that transforms with the environment. So next summer, we will build the first one of these prototypes with the help of Pratt Institute. And this will function as a gathering space for art students and local residents in Brooklyn. But since this will be the first one of a longer series, then right now we are looking for collaborations with further institutions and for funding to further develop this project. We believe that such collaborations could lead towards a common practice of design where technique and process are a priority, are at the center. And so we hope that by calling the attention to forms of construction that are away from the conventional, that we can provide inventive collective imaginaries. Then, and only then, will architecture be able to contribute to a common good. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Boy Wen, and this is Jahan. We're futurists and designers and the founders of Project INKBLOT, a design for diversity consultancy. I'm a first-generation Chinese American from Amherst, Massachusetts.
And I'm a native New Yorker, born and raised on the Lower East Side.
We joined forces in 2014 as strategy consultants, working with companies that would bring us in to be the cultural bridge between them and the communities who they were trying to reach. Time and time again, those folks that they were trying to reach were not at the decision-making table, leading to ineffective and inauthentic results. So we began to codify our most successful work and designed this framework, Design for Diversity, also known as D for D, to help teams illuminate blind spots and cultural and racial biases within their design processes before they get embedded into the end product or service. We target specifically tech and media companies who have the biggest global reach in terms of the products and services that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. Frequently, these things are built with biased processes leading to biased results.
So when we work with companies who are faced with diversity, equity, and inclusion challenges, typically their solve is to run implicit bias trainings. And while those can be useful and are really helpful, that's identity work, it happens for the rest of our lives. It leaves employees saying, okay, well now what? So we are the now what? And before we move on, let's just share quickly what we mean when we say design for diversity. It's sort of an umbrella term for diversity, inclusion, and equity. So when we say diversity, the way we define it is like optics, like who's in the room right now? What does it look like, right? Inclusion is not just, I feel like I belong. It's really, am I respected as a leader and as a decision maker? And equity is like the glue that holds it all together. Equity is what are the systems and the processes that uphold our commitment to diversity and inclusion. Without systems and processes, nothing shifts. So, okay, when we're not designing for diversity intentionally, we see things like this. Gucci, Prada, Katy Perry evoking blackface imagery in their products. And we see things like this. Some of y'all might not know, young black man uploaded a photo of him and his friend, a black woman, to Google Photos, and they were tagged as gorillas. There are two really important things to note. The first is that there weren't any black programmers on this particular Google team. And the other thing to note is that they didn't have a diverse data set, meaning they weren't dark-skinned faces or black faces embedded into the algorithm.
So let's take a look at the impact. For companies, it's clear there's a diminishing of their customer loyalty, brand trust, obviously billions of dollars in sales. That really matters to companies. But let's take a look on the real life implications on society. So diversity is a design process. All of these things were designed that way, and they can be redesigned.
Okay, those are some dire headlines. Let's look at something positive, right? So Rihanna has her famous beauty company, Fenty, and they really transformed the beauty industry by starting with first 40 and then 50 shades of foundation, addressing a wide spectrum of skin tones. And so many beauty brands have followed suit because of this, thereby shifting the industry. It's really important to say that Rihanna was super involved in this process and really model what it looks like when you bring in the communities you're trying to reach at every level of the design process. And there's been a real upsurge in black beauty influencers who are now partnering with brands as leaders and decision makers.
In 2017, we teamed up with fashion tech company Rent the Runway to launch a new initiative to help women entrepreneurs build scalable businesses. What they initially missed were the specific pain points of women of color, immigrant women, and low-income women, who make up altogether the biggest growing number of entrepreneurs in the country. By illuminating their blind spots, we were able to alter their programming, their outreach strategies to engage a much larger market. So when we talk about design for diversity, we're looking at 5 key areas in the framework. So each of these key areas has a core question. So intent versus impact. In what ways might your impact diverge from your intent? Interdependent team speaks about how do the different identities of the team indicate or implicate how you make decisions on your team and your ways of working together. Equity ideation centers equity at the very beginning of even the idea itself. And source community talks about the people who you're trying to reach and the people who you didn't even think about who might interact with or be impacted by your service and product. And lastly, source iteration is the process of improving your product informed by the source community, the people that you're trying to reach.
Okay, so this is what we're leaving you with. Diversity is a design process. It's not a good intention. It's not happenstance. It's practical, it's actionable, it's essential, and we can all be leaders in it. We're like always looking to partner with companies who want to learn and more importantly, practice designing for diversity. So if that's you, come say hi. Thank you.
Hi there. Hi. My name is Jeremy Thompson, and I'm the founder of 2N.
And I'm Alejandro Crawford, a co-founder of 2N.
2N specializes in real-time immersive experiences for a wide variety of clients and applications.
Jeremy and I met a few years ago when we both worked at an experiential design firm that focused on the integration of media and architecture.
Before working at the firm, I provided freelance 3D rendering and pre-visualization services for brands like Google and eBay, Versace and Prada, and artists like Annie Leibovitz and Jeff Koons.
And I designed shows for bands like MGMT, Tame Impala, Sufjan Stevens, as well as designing interactive works for museums like the Guggenheim and brands like Proenza Schooler.
Alejandro and I were the only two designers at the firm using game engines to design for media architecture. And so, as we began collaborating, what started as our way of communicating ideas to one another evolved naturally into a robust suite of real-time architectural pre-visualization tools that were now being implemented by the firm's other design teams, in addition to providing all client-facing executables, demos, fly-throughs, and ultimately an entire restructuring of the company's rendering and production pipeline.
Our software let the architects and modelers rapidly prototype their ideas. It let the creative technologists preview their media on virtual LED walls and virtual projection surfaces. And it let the interior designers test out different furniture, flooring, and wall materials, all in real time, in virtual reality or around the design table.
And it wasn't long before our use of game engines started crossing over from the realm of design tool to the world of content creation and production software for permanent installations.
We began designing fully reactive installations driven by LiDAR sensors and thermal cameras, which controlled our virtual worlds, extending our pre-visualization functionality to develop immersive content like these stylized nature simulations you see with flora and fauna that react to activity in the lobby and listen to real-time weather data, which is to say, if it's raining in the real world, it would be raining in these simulated worlds.
And so, inspired by the possibilities of the kind of work we were starting to make, we decided to found 2N with a mission of creating high-quality immersive experiences that push the boundaries of technology and design. We're proud to say that our first formal collaboration together, designing Childish Gambino's dome show, Pharaohs, which took place last November in New Zealand and was incubated here at New Ink, was just awarded Best Visual Effects in a Special Venue Project by the Visual Effects Society at this year's VES Awards.
On Pharaohs, 2N directed all creative, all art, and all technical design, including the development of the show's one-of-a-kind hardware system and custom software, which allowed us to render the entire show in real time at a staggering resolution inside of the world's largest inflatable dome.
And while at 2N, we're always designing real-time experiences that push the norm of traditional game, that are outside the norm of traditional game development, we're also avid gamers and have a deep desire to create our own original content, which is why over the past few years, Alejandro and I have been developing an episodic, narrative-driven VR puzzle game called River Road.
River Road tells the story of a young woman named Tess, whose father Stan left her and her mother 10 years ago. She thought he was gone for good until a small-town Florida credit union leaves her a series of voicemails. Stan's account is in arrears and he's vanished without a trace.
Now, Tess must investigate Stan's dilapidated and overgrown Florida riverfront homestead to solve the mystery of his disappearance, aided only by her wits and a deceitful AI multi-tool. River Road combines beautifully rendered art, narrative depth, and boundary-pushing interactivity to bring players a science fiction experience unlike any other.
We want to bring the same pioneering spirit and cutting-edge approach that 2N defines its commercial practices with to this world of narrative game design. We are consistently inspired by emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning, and think that these practices, when introduced to narrative design, will redefine not only the way that games are made, but also the very definition of what it means to author digital literature, whether using policy-based reinforcement learning to help develop the actions of non-player characters, or more pragmatically, training AI to play the game and hunt for bugs. So between 2017 and 2018, the VR market has exploded. It's grown from a $3 billion industry to an $8 billion industry, and by 2023, that number is expected to exceed $45 billion. The forthcoming Oculus Quest and Vive Cosmos, which are their kind of trackerless models, are poised to build heavily upon the work that PlayStation VR has already done in bringing this technology into the mainstream, and it is safe to say that there has never been more demand for new content.
With River Road, we're looking to expand out of our current services model and build up a small but concentrated team of artists, graphics and gameplay programmers, deep learning specialists, and more. We are looking for $4 million in venture capital and are actively seeking investors who are ready to partner with us in bringing this game to market. We started River Road in early 2017, developing the world, shaping the narrative, and workshopping game mechanics on our spare time. As of today, we have a playable vertical slice demo that includes a cinematic cold open, followed by a mechanics tutorial scene, all the way up to the game's first real puzzle. It offers a firm glimpse at our aesthetic and narrative vision and our general approach to virtual reality design.
So we started this project as a labor of love and have taken it to a place where we are now ready to focus on it, as a full-time commercial endeavor. Alongside the acquisition of capital, we are hoping to kick it off production by 2020 with a targeted ship date of early 2023. We hope to see you in the Sky Room. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dina Muller, and I'm the founder of the Living Trust for the Arts. We are collectivizing legacy planning for visual artists to support their career and life plans and to galvanize resources for emerging and future artists. Visual artists, their life, their work, and their values are part of the broader cultural domain. LTA collaborates to situate them there on their own terms permanently. I started my career in the arts as the director of the historic collective AIR Gallery. My career has grown with the careers of these prolific, iconic, and often overlooked artists, many of whom are now in their 70s and 80s, or have already passed into history. The challenges they and their supporters face in planning their legacies are as complex as those they met as artists. And just as their practices were strengthened through collectivization, so are their legacies. The professional is the personal. Since my start at AIR, I have worked for art services organizations like Art Table, New York Foundation for the Arts, Q Art Foundation, and Sugar Hill Museum. And as a consulting project manager for artists' projects like Hank Willis Thomas's Four Freedoms, Dred Scott's Slave Rebellion reenactment, Sarah Z's Triple Point for the Venice Biennale, and Suzanne Lacey's Between the Door and the Street with Creative Time. What I've learned working closely with artists all these years is that the art world needs real financial and legal resources that go beyond the occasional grants, residencies, and exhibition opportunities to support sustained practice and long-term legacy planning. For example, Daria DeRoche is a founding member of AIR. She and her husband John are both artists and lifelong teachers. They are retired today and own an apartment in New York City and a farm on the Delaware Water Gap. With only art world heirs to consider, they intend to sell the apartment to endow the farm as a residency and a study space for other artists, and they need support to do so. Mildred Thompson wasn't a part of AIR Gallery, but is Daria and John's age peer, and died too young, living and working as an artist and a teacher in Atlanta. Today, her partner, and a former student, now a curator, are working together to plan her legacy, and they need support to do so. Sanford Biggers is a mid-career artist who has already begun to think about legacy planning. With his studio practice growing and the birth of his first child, he is considering setting up a private living trust and needs support to do so. According to the 2010 census and the National Endowment for the Arts, there are 2.1 million artists in America, and 40% of them are over the age of 45. The largest intergenerational transfer of wealth in history is about to happen, and it's now expected to be more than double what many thought. It's estimated that 45 million US households will transfer $68 trillion over the next 25 years. And while we know that artists are rarely members of the 1% with substantial wealth to consider, they hold much more in cultural property, real estate, and values-driven social contributions as educators, institutional founders, and community organizers. Those artists who are part of the 1%, those who hold considerable market position during their lifetime, have the capacity to create independently funded foundations to maintain their legacies and advance their values in perpetuity. We could do the math on all that, but as the myth goes, artists aren't that good at math. And while that's ridiculously untrue, it's also not the point. The real point brings us to that other ridiculous myth, the starving artist. Living Trust for the Arts exists to support the other 99% who make up the art world as a whole and have ambitions to both live well and leave much. Artists have life heirs and they have art world heirs. We are helping them to ensure resources for all they value in their personal lives and their professional lives. And in doing so, collectivizing substantial resources to sustain art and artists into the future. The project of the Living Trust for the Arts uses a corporate model that is a hybrid of both for-profit and nonprofit resources for artists, using the income generated in each context to sustain programming and services throughout. For artists in later stages of career, the focus is on legacy and established planned permanence. For artists in early and mid-career, the focus is on artist services and creating access to cash and space. I've assembled a team of advisors from my colleagues in the field of artist services, and together we seek initial investment and collaborators in the financial, insurance, and legal services industries to facilitate the collectivization of shared assets among artists at all stages of career. LTA will return resources to participants at all points of contact by creating a sustained circular economy to support artists and the art world. Just as energy can't be created or destroyed, only transferred, the same should be true of the consolidated resources of a generation of artists. LTA facilitates that energy transfer for the arts. Thank you.
What would it feel like to get back into a present tense relationship with the sun? I don't think I have to tell this room that climate change is no longer a matter of if, it's a matter of how bad. And citizens feel guilty, simultaneously responsible and powerless. But what if I told you that doom and gloom story is a trap? And the tools we need to build a coherent carbon future and the galvanized public that will take us there are already here. The conventional story we tell ourselves about climate change is that it's a problem of burning fuels for the production of electricity and for fuels for transport. What that story misses is the third of global emissions that come from the chemistry of stuff. So, let's look at the materials that are currently complicit in climate change. We're talking primarily about cement, steel, and plastic. These materials are carbon emitters because they are fossilized life. They are ancient sunlight. So what do I mean by ancient sunlight? Big, beautiful carbon-based molecules are how life stores the energy of the sun. Let's follow the sunlight in plastic for a moment. Photosynthesizing organisms hundreds of millions of years ago took carbon and energy from the sun to build carbon-based molecules that drifted to the ocean floor, gradually accumulated into carbon-rich sedimentary rock. This rock went through just the right sequence of pressure, heat, and capture to produce petroleum. We then take up that slurry of carbon molecules, separate them by length, break them apart, and recombine them into all of our plastics. This process off-gasses carbon all along its chain. Thinking about materials as ancient sunlight raised the question for me, what would happen if we made them out of present tense sunlight? It turns out we can, and if we made our materials out of present tense sunlight, which is to say the product of photosynthesis happening right now, we could not only reduce our dependence on ancient carbon, we could, if we do it just right, trap our current carbon in our materials. I see a future where the building that shelters me and the shirt on my back have a desirable impact on the concentration of carbon in the atmosphere, and where individuals can re-engage with climate change because they can touch it and they can have hope. And this isn't science fiction. This is a raincoat I made from a plastic I developed that's made from marine algae. It's carbon negative, which is to say, it's made of naturally sequestered carbon. I am far from alone. There are breakthroughs happening in biology and catalytic chemistry in real time. And we increasingly have the technology to make new and old materials out of biomass and present tense sunlight. We're on the edge of a revolution and we don't have the vocabulary to ask for it. We have a guilt about consumption. We've tried telling each other that the moral thing to do is to reduce our consumption. How's that going? Here's my provocation. Making things out of present tense sunlight can mean the end of guilt over consumption. Consumption could be carbon negative behavior. Here's my other provocation. Carbon negative materials bypass policy. They give us ethical agency beyond just trying to be a little less bad and waiting for policymakers to act. I'm Charlotte McCurdy, and After Ancient Sunlight is a project that builds a path to the future where materials help us combat climate change. My algae plastic is just one illustration of a materials future where culture is a carbon sink. In a paralyzed policy environment, we need a citizen-led movement to pave the way to a market-led inevitability. This is political realism. It is psychological realism. This is nonfiction art. The next phase of this project is a narrative nonfiction book about materials and climate change in order to build that vocabulary, to ask for that future, and to build a platform to reach as many people as I can. The book's goal is to be the omnivore's dilemma of materials. If you're excited about this project, I'm eager for introductions to research partners, to documentary filmmakers, maybe, and I'm looking for funders who share my passion for the power of an informed public, for biotechnological and scientific innovation, and for addressing climate change in bold and creative ways. So, what will it feel like to get back into a present tense relationship with the sun? I don't know, but I know I'm hungry for it.